is a founder of Philly Knits, Wild Foodies of Philly, and since 2010. So we're going to be doing this, talking about 10 plants. We're going to try to keep it rolling quickly so that we can cover the plants and that you can have an opportunity to ask some questions. Danny, so why don't you take it away? Danny is our expert on medicinal herbs, and I do more of the edible stuff.
Okay, I wouldn't say expert, but let's say passionate consumer of and user of. How's that?
Yeah.
Let's start from the beginning just to give everybody an idea where we're going with this. We were just talking about these are specifically plants that are available now or in the next coming weeks. There was no point in showing you things like Kusa that aren't going to be available for months and months yet. So these are the plants that Lynn and I talked about and thought would be easy enough for you to spot and to start using now. So Lynn, if you want to take it away with sharing what you want on Plantain.
Have to unmute myself. I'm going to do this. Okay. All right. So I need for you to take down your Plantain for a moment, and I'm going to bring up my. Do you see this, everyone? The master list?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Listen. Rather than me struggle with this, let me take that down again. Oh, I have to bring up screen share. Okay, I have to put this up again. Sorry about this. We practiced this yesterday, and I thought I was ready to go, but apparently I'm not. So let me get this back in again, and then I'll do a stop screen share. Hopefully that'll do it. It's still not doing it.
Click on
okay.
the PAFA one.
The what?
After you hit screen share, you have to, there you go.
Yeah, but I didn't, I still don't have my screen share though for what I wanted to. Do you see it now?
Yeah, I do. Okay,
you see the master list?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the master list that you'll find from wildfoodies.org. And then you go to the a grid of 3 panels, and it's at the top of the middle panel. It says master list. And so this is organized according to plants, vines, bushes, and trees. So so we're going to go to Plantain, which is right here. And so you have your broadleaf and narrowleaf plantain. I'm going to click on to the narrowleaf because that happens to be my personal favorite. First, I do want to, before I say anything about the Plantain, I do want to make some just general announcements about these plants, since they're all basically have medicinal purposes. Not all, they all have medicinal purposes. Not all of them are herbs per se, but many of them are. So when you're dealing with an herb, we're talking about small amounts, you know, and with foraging, more isn't better in many cases. And particularly if you're starting out, more isn't better at all. You just start in really, really small amounts to see how your body reacts to it. The other thing also is, in general, you harvest greens before the plant blossoms, you know, ideally, but not always. A lot of people harvest things and they're in bloom, the greens. And thirdly, when you go to dry things, now, particularly when it comes to plantain, plantain dries best if you're simply going to put it on like a basket or hang it and let it dry naturally. That's the best way to do that. Okay, so you have 2 kinds of plantain. You've got your broadleaf and narrowleaf. My personal favorite is the narrowleaf because it's hardier. I can transplant it. It seems to last better. I'm growing it inside now. And it lasts longer throughout the winter time. So it sort of hunkers down. So let me give you an example of what it would look like. This is kind of what it looks like in the winter time. It hunkers down and flattens out. So you can still get it fresh. And I like to use my plantain fresh. And so I've had a history of diverticulitis and some other things. And so to just take a little bit of that and put it in a blender with water, that helps. You know, just sip on that, sieve out the greens, sip on that. But uh, Danny will get more into that. Frankly, let me just say that the taste is like mushrooms, which is unusual. It's an unusual taste for a plant. Most plants don't taste like mushrooms. These do. The seeds you can use for bird, a seed. You want to dry it slowly and carefully because otherwise it can turn brown. So whereas I'll put other greens on a lamp or something or a radiator to quicken the drying process, I would not do that with plantain because they tend to turn brown. When you dry herbs, they should maintain a green color. They should not go brown. And so just keep that in mind. And that's it. You want to eat them. If you're going to eat them as food, you want to eat them young so that they chew up, because as they get older, you can boil them all you want. They really do not break down. So the best way to break them down is to dry them and then crush them up, put them in a blender, and I'm not a blender, put them in a jar, and then you can have them for year-round use. Okay, that's it for me. Danny, take it away.
Okay. All right. Like Lynn said, there are two versions of plantain that you'll see in this area: Plantago major, which is the round leaf plantain, and then the narrow leaf that Lynn was just talking about, Plantago lanceolata. There is also a third, which is Plantago rugelli, which is the only native. The other two actually are invaders from Europe. They were originally called white man's footprint because wherever settlers came in, it kind of followed. They actually have recorded history of the plants actually being discovered in the tracks. As you know, wheels and things would go past, it would pop up there. It's also been called waybread because it likes to pop up during like the side of the road. So that's another big one. Back historically, it's been used for a number of things. It's been used as an alternative, which means it gradually changes the state from morbid or abnormal to and ill health to health. It's been used as an astringent, antiseptic, analgesic, diuretic, and a refrigerant. So what does that mean in the real world? Well, it means it's been used, historically they used to say it was to ward off the flying venoms, which basically refer to pox and plague. And it's been used in everything from issues with IBS to there used to be a remedy of taking the plantain leaves, soaking them in vinegar, and then letting them dry, and then putting them in your socks for leg pain. But for everyday uses, it can be used for IBS, ulcers. It's one of those plants that can be used for either constipation or as to kind of check dysentery, because the seeds are really mucilaginous. So the seeds are the biggest thing that are used for stomach issues because the mucilaginous nature of the seeds can help congeal things if your bowels are loose. But at the same time, when it hits water, it bulks up so that if you're having problems with constipation, it helps flush you out as well. It's also really good for things like mouth ulcers, and it can be chewed for toothache pain. Overall, it's great for any kind of skin issues. I make a little salve of it with beeswax and oil just because it's great to carry with you. If you have cuts, scrapes, or anything. But if you see it on the road, you can simply do a spit poultice where you chew up the leaf and then kind of spit it out and put it on any bite. It's been used to draw out venom from bee stings, things like that. It's also great as a tea if you're using the leaves for coughing, any kind of heavy chesty cold. It also checks heavy bleeding and sorry about that. And that's enough for plantain. Oh, one last thing. It does contain two active constituents, occupin and apigenin. And occupin has great anti-inflammatory properties, and apigenin is great for things like chronic diseases. And it's actually being studied now for not only the way that it fights chronic diseases like IBS, but also cancer and Alzheimer's. So that's going to be something to look out for the future.
Yeah, I think that if you don't learn any other medicinal plant, this is the one to learn because it's all over the world pretty much. So this is the most important herb, and it's also an antibiotic, right? It can be used basically like that. I mean, that, at least that's how I use it in general. And PFAF also puts it down as that. So any kind of internal or external wound, it should help, but you want to, it depends. It is a coagulant, so if you're on blood thinners, you don't want to be taking a lot of that, so you might want to marry that with a blood thinner, an hour later or something like that. I would think. We're not doctors, so we're not giving that kind of advice, but it's just, to me, it's the most important medicinal herb that you can learn, and it's just so abundant. It's everywhere. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody? You can unmute yourself and ask
Anyone?
a question. Anybody use it? Has anyone used it? Okay, hi. Okay, so if you want to unmute yourself and say yes as a chorus,
Yes.
that would be interesting.
Yes, I've used it, made salves of it, and it is miraculous.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Jim.
Hi, Lynn.
Jim's one of our early members from Bucks County. Yay. Okay, great. So why don't we our next plant, Danny, do you want to do the screen? Oh no, I'll do it. Okay, so our next plant is okay, I'll do the screen share. Let me just, okay. Okay, so Danny's doing the screen share on the mints. They're all different kinds of mints. Danny, let me get my screen up for a minute, okay? So I just can I do that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just, I need you to take that down, I think.
No, you can just go on.
Oh,
I've
okay.
given you permission.
Oh, okay. So let me just, okay, then in that case, it says you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. That's what it's saying to me. Okay, so let me just try.
Try again.
Okay, so wait a minute. Let me get it into here. Screen share, plant profile. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the plant profile list, go back to the master list, and go under mints. So I want you to see the mints. So that's at the top of the third column. I start with ground cover, which are out now, and then it goes to what I call upright mints, for lack of a better word. And so you can see there are many mints that you can take advantage of all year long. Really, there's always a mint around. So right now, I've noticed the purple dead nettle without the purple right now, because it's a little early for the flower. But you can see the leaf coming up, and that's mixed in with the henbit, which is a little bit different, and it's got a funny design. Do you see it swirls around the stem like that? Again, you're not going to see the blossom, but you do see the plant coming up, and they often come up together. So that's a purple dead nettle, henbit, and then the other one is ground ivy. Ground ivy is not up as much as the others are, but that's the leaf, and they all have that light pinkish purplish flower in the spring, and they all have a similar, the minty quality. The thing about mints, this is just a caveat for me, is if I have too much mint, I'll get like arthritic quality, feelings. So again, it's something you have a little bit of, but you shouldn't be drinking mint water all day long. I wouldn't. It's more of a medicinal. The creeping Charlie is great for keeping bugs and rodents away. That you can use that. So I have it growing out of planters, and it just drapes. It's one of the more aromatic plants, and you know, again, it's got a lot of medicinal qualities. And where I'm seeing it right now for people living in Philadelphia, I'm seeing it behind the art museum. I mean, it's everywhere, but I walk behind the art museum between the back lawn and the old Waterworks restaurant along that rock face. It's growing abundantly. And so, you know, you can find it in lawns and on different parks, but you can be looking for it. It likes to have a sheltered space right now, but it is out. It is out and about. So, and then the mints, you know, they say all mints are square stemmed, but not all square stems are mints. So that's, you know, that's something that you can look at. But again, go to our website. We also have, if you go to the Wild Foodies homepage, you'll also see something on the list called lookalikes, and that's in the middle column. And you can click onto that, and it helps you differentiate between some of the plants, particularly the mints. Not that, you know, it doesn't matter that much, but if you, you know, like to know exactly what you're talking about, it's helpful. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and take it away, Danny.
Okay. With most mints and the mint family, when most people talk about mint in a therapeutic way, they're generally thinking about spearmint or peppermint. Which is fine, but that's not what you're going to find generally when you go out foraging. So while I will say that spearmint is fantastic, or peppermint and spearmint are fantastic therapeutically, don't underestimate the power of the other ones. As far as mints go, yes, mints do have square stems, but not all square stems are mints. Like nettle has a square stem and it's not a mint, but all mints also have opposing leaves. And although spearmint and peppermint are preferred in therapy, most of them in the same family will have some of the same functions. So most mints will have, to a greater or lesser extent, antiseptic, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, analgesic, and antidepressant properties. Specifically with, I'll just say about peppermint and spearmint, peppermint is great for being both warming and cooling. It's warming because it helps with circulation, and it's cooling because it helps diffuse pain. But with all the stomach things that peppermint is recommended for, it's not recommended for people that have GERD. In that case, you should really go for spearmint, which is milder. But when you're talking about the other mints that you will find, you'll find catmint or catnip naturally. And that's great if you have nervous issues or if you're looking for a way to promote sleep. It's also an antipyretic, which means that it helps to bring down fever. And catnip is great for children because it acts very mildly on stomach issues. Ground ivy that Lynn discussed. It's a mild expectorant. It can be used, I know Lynn uses it to keep mice and things at bay in floor cleaners and things. And it's also a mild expectorant. Dead nettle is great for anti-inflammatory. It's especially good for allergic inflammation. So if you're a person that suffers from seasonal allergies, when this comes up, it's a great time to use it to make tea. There's also henbit, which is strongly anti-rheumatic. So if you have joint aches and pains, as well as being a gentle laxative and a vulnerary, which just means that it helps wound healing. And lamb's ear, or Stachys byzantia, known as woundwort, used to be used a lot more in the mint family because it's antiseptic and it has fuzzier leaves. So it kind of reminds you of that soft feeling. Unfortunately, the picture does not show up here, but the soft feeling that it has reminds you of mullein leaf, that fuzzy kind of African violet, soft, fuzzy leaf. So it used to be used a lot in the treatment of bleeding wounds because it's so absorbent and so soft, but it's not really used too much in herbalism these days, but it was something that was used, and because it is available when you go foraging, I just wanted to mention it. So that is about it on the mints. So Lynn?
Any questions on the mints? Anybody use any of these ground cover? I call them ground cover mints because that's kind of how they grow. They spread out. Yes, yes. I see one hand up. Just you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I've used it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh,
Yep.
you've used it? Yes. And how do you use it?
I made some teas last spring. I was just kind of playing around with it and stuff like that, but for the allergies, for the inflammation.
And did it help?
Yeah, it did. I really like the purple dead nettle. I
Yeah,
really like it.
yeah, excellent. Anyone else using any of the wild mints? Yeah, Melissa.
I've eaten the the purple dead nettle.
Yeah, yeah,
Just cooked it like sauteed it like a green lightly.
uh-huh. Yeah, great, great, great. Okay, so anybody have it in their yard? Because if you have a yard, which some people do, okay, great. I really envy you because we lived in Bucks County for 24 years and I wasn't into wild foodies at the time. Now we've been in the city for 20 years and it's like, oh, I'd give anything to have a plot of land to because it just makes things so much easier.
Yeah, I'm in
That
Bucks
said,
County now.
pardon me?
I'm in Bucks County now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like last year when everything hit, I just went out to my yard to explore. So with my
Yeah,
kids, so
and what you can do is you can bring things in. This is the thing is, you know, just transplant things into your yard and just have a border. It doesn't have to, you know, it doesn't have to look like Weed City, but you can have a border and or do a serpentine garden or something like that to accommodate these plants. Okay, let's go on to the third one, which is common mallow. And again, I'm gonna try to do this screen share and get back into my, there we go, back into the master plant list. There are lots of mallows. And where are we? The mallow is part of the hibiscus family. So you've got the common mallow, which is the smallest, which has a little flower. Then you've got the high mallow, which is more upright, bigger flower. You've got the marshmallow, Rose of Sharon, which it grows on my street. Many people have Rose of Sharon. That's the leaves and the flowers in particular are very edible. Then you've got the velvet leaf mallow. So, but we're going to be talking about the common mallow, and this is what it looks like. You can, you know, it really looks like geranium. It looks like a geranium in many aspects. And it grows like that above the ground and sort of crawls. The whole plant is edible. It's in the ochre family. But the thing is, the leaves can be kind of fuzzy. So it kind of can irritate the throat. So it's probably best really well cooked. You know, I found it, well, the Swedish American Museum at FDR Park has it on the front lawn. They have it at Dickinson Square. You just have to look for those leaves and it grows in a cluster. The other thing also is, it is, like I said, it's mucilaginous. It has these little cheeses, they call it. So that would be the bud, and it looks like a circle of cheese. So they call it cheeses. So that's very, you know, interesting about it. And again, it's a common plant that lasts a large part of the year. Danny, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Okay, as Lynn said, this is common mallow, Malva neglecta. Generally speaking, it's used as an astringent, an anti-inflammatory, and a demulcent for soothing irritated mucous membranes. So you can use either the leaf or the root, although I do know that a lot of people will wait until the flower comes out and then tincture the flower. The tinctured flowers are really for respiratory complaints like bronchitis and coughs, whereas the tea made of leaves or out of the root is a good anti-inflammatory. Internally, it's good for things like sore throat, mouth issues. Externally, it's also really good on bruises, bites, and stings. If you believe in, there was an old version of herbalism called the doctrine of signatures. So they would actually give attributes of a plant based on what it looked like. And so some people felt that the waviness of the leaf actually reminded them of the kidney. So they would say it was really good for kidney complaints, urinary tract infections, and bladder infections if you make a decoction out of the root. but you can use it just for sore throats and for topical things by just using the leaf. It grows profusely. I know in Center City here, in South Philly, it grows everywhere. Hawthorne Park area, I see it all the time, just growing next to trees. So it's readily available even now, because we've had pretty mild winter thus far. So if you can get it and dry it, I'm not much on eating it because I'm really not great with mucilaginous textures like okra, not my favorite, but you can dry it and use it as a tea for a really good effect.
One thing I wanted to add also is it's used as a thickener. So a soup thickener, that sort of thing. So you can use it that way. Just think of the mallow family, marshmallow. So that's one of the uses for it. So if you have something where you're trying to bulk it up and all of that, then it's good. The mucilaginous, yes. I was never a fan of okra, but if you think of it as thickening something up and using it in that context, then it becomes more helpful, like a stew. You want, instead of using grains to thicken something up, like flour, oat flour or some sort of flour, you can use these plants because they're that quality to them. Any questions, anybody? You just have to unmute yourself to ask a question. Yes, Peggy.
Not a question. I actually think that's just started this winter in my yard, because I grew up in this house and I moved back in 2012. And a few weeks ago, I noticed this stuff in my front yard and I thought, what is that? It looks like a geranium.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is, buy an app, get an app on your, I like to use the app Picture This on my phone, and that it's not 100% perfect at all, but it will help confirm certain things. So it is an aid. So get an app, and that way it'll give you more confidence in what you're looking at.
It's so interesting because when I grew up here, the yard was all grass, and then I moved out and I moved back in 2012. And the yard has been, the only things I recognize so far are plantain, purslane, and all the mints. It's like what people would consider, people look at it now and think it's a yard of weeds. And because it's not grass anymore, but it's all, I'm learning it's all of these plants that can be used for things.
Color me
Yes,
green
take
with
a-
envy.
That's why, yes, that's why I joined this group, because I'm like, I think these can be used. I'm not
Oh,
pulling them out.
absolutely.
Let me find out.
Yeah,
So that's why I
absolutely.
joined the group.
You can put a lot of stuff in a small place, because I put it in my back. I have like an alley back there that's, about 6 feet wide. It's not even that.
Yeah.
And I've got plants on the wall, on top of the walls, and in containers and everything. So you can put a lot of, you have a lot of plants, because a lot of these you're just using a small amount. So, that really works that way. I've got to figure, I get a lot of slugs. And I attract them with beer. And so they just all come in and jump into that bowl. And I'm like, I should be eating this, but I haven't built up the courage yet to do it. So that's going to be a group affair virtually.
But yeah, go away and come back after 19 years and the whole lawn has changed. So.
Yeah. Well, that happens even on Lemon Hill when I go up there. Sometimes whole plants arrive, and then they start spreading. And so things don't really stay static for a reason. And in some cases, like plants may not be there because they've taken the nutrients out of the soil, whatever they were there for, and then something else moves in. So, okay, so we're going to go on to the next one because time is a wasting. We're going to go to chickweed, and the chickweed is there. We've got the common chickweed, and I'm going to try to do the screen share again. That's not it. Let me just stop my share there. So let me go back and do a screen share. Good, got it. So I'm going back to the plant profile list. Okay, so if you look up, look at the first column down, there are 3 different kinds of chickweed: common, fuzzy, and sticky, which is, we're not going to worry about that. The common chickweed is what most people see. The fuzzy mouse-eared chickweed is less common. I think has a better taste, but we're going to focus on the common chickweed. And that you'll find it can really last all year long if it's in a sheltered place in a cool setting, but it really likes the colder weather. The thing is, I like it chopped up and boiled in a soup, and it tastes delicious. And if you eat it raw, to me it has a funny effect. But then I found out that it has saponins in it, which is what it is a foaming agent for soaps. And so if you cook it, that minimizes that, if not, neutralizes it. So so now I'm thinking, hey, maybe I could take a bunch of chickweed and put it in my laundry. But anyway, saponins, there's actually, I've created a new category on my front page for Wild Foodies to just connect directly with PFAF, Plants for a Future, and their saponin plant list. Okay, so anyway, here is the chickweed. You can eat it raw or cook it, and Danny's going to speak more about it. So Danny, take it away.
Okay. All right, with chickweed, here we go. Stellara media. It's great anti-inflammatory, astringent, demulcent. Like we said, it just soothes your mucous membranes. It's diuretic, expectorant. It's nourishing and a refrigerant. And one of the things I like about it is as an anti-inflammatory and as a refrigerant, it makes it really useful when you're doing an infused oil or just as an infusion to be used on skin. It helps to cool skin. So if you've got sunburn, it's helpful for that. It's an anti-prurient, which means that it helps if you have really itchy skin, it will help with that. And it can also be used as a drawing agent. So if you make a salve with chickweed, it can really help. A lot of people think of other things, like we're going to talk about white pine, which is also incredibly drawing, but chickweed will do it as well. If you do a poultice to try and get a splinter out and you put it on your finger or whatever, provided you leave it there for a couple hours, you will be surprised, but it will draw it out. The bruised leaves can also be used for a number of skin issues. I know with women that suffer from engorgement during breastfeeding, it can be helpful for helping breasts that have gotten hard from the milk collection to soften them and to help with expression. It's also a good nourishing tea for people that have wasting diseases. That could be the elderly that aren't eating. That could be people that are coming off of other illnesses and don't feel really eaty. It can help with that. It's also been prescribed in the past for people that had consumption. If you go back to historical tomes of Brother Aloysius, that's what he was big into. It's also been given as a strong tea for people that suffer from epilepsy. The ratio is like 1 to 4. So it'd be like a half a cup of chickweed to 2 cups of water in order to get the full strength of it. It's been used as an expectorant for people that have issues, coughs, colds, lung issues, to lower cholesterol. It has beta sitosterol. So the cellular construction or the construction of what beta sitosterol looks like really mirrors what dietary fat, the way that is constructed. So inside of your gastric tract, it actually starts to compete with that for space. So it can help with fat absorption to prevent that from happening. It can help to work as an appetite suppressant. Like Lynn said, it does have saponin, so you do have to be careful about drinking or eating a lot of it because it can lead to nausea. And it also has a cute little thing that when it's a sunny day, the little white flowers in the springtime when they're there will open, but if rain is approaching, they'll start to close up.
Oh,
Little fun fact there.
yay. Any questions? You have to just unmute yourself. Any questions?
Can you dry chickweed? Is it just as effective?
Yes, I actually keep a big container of dried chickweed, and on days that I'm feeling a little blah, I will drink a really strong cup of it because it really does help kind of naturally detox your body. So it's a good one for that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
And what is the best way to take it for fat?
I would do it as a strong tea. Like I have a tea container that when I dump the dried herb in it, I just pour the water on top, but I cover it because if it has any volatile oils, you don't want those to escape. But with most herbs, as opposed to like chopped up tea that you get in tea bags, you're going to have to let it steep longer. The longer you can let it infuse, the better. But if you can do like a 1-to-4 ratio with it, and then drink that over the course of the day, I wouldn't have much more than say 8 to 16 ounces of it, because like we said, the saponins can leave you a little nauseous or bilious. But if you're trying to do weight control, that might work too, because how much can you eat if you're feeling sick to your stomach?
Yes. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a lot of pots on my balcony, and I'm in an apartment, and it just sort of comes up in a lot of them. And so I started just collecting it and putting it in eggs and things like that, just or just adding it to a salad. Eggs, it's very colorful.
It is, and it will grow in pots. I have it in my backyard that's popping through. That was one of the first things that was popping up, and it was doing quite well before we got the last snow. So,
Danny, I just want to mention the time. Are we out of time at this point?
technically, Zoom should be kicking us out in a minute, but the link that I've given you is going to be the same. So if I end this and we come back in, everybody should be able to use the same link and not have any problem.
Click on the same link.
I saw I got a message on my screen saying that the host has extended this past the 40 minutes, so we might not be kicked off.
Okay, well, we can just keep talking till they kick us off and then click on to the same link, right? Everyone got that? Everyone got that? Okay. Okay, that's it. Okay, so if I'm gonna do the screen share again to go to our next one, which is garlic mustard. Oh, wait a minute, that didn't work again. Here we go. There we go. So back to the plant profile and on to garlic mustard. The mustards and the cresses I have in the middle of the third column. It says mustard and cress. They're in the same family, similar family. Somebody who's a botanist would probably want to kill me. But at any rate, so we're going to click on to the garlic mustard. All right, there it is. The garlic mustard does have a little bit of cyanide in it, like other things do, like kidney beans and things like that, or lima beans actually. So cooking does minimize that. So I would not eat that without eating it, with other foods. You want to eat it with other foods. If you make a pesto, which is what it's, kind of famous for, known for, the pesto, I would add other greens into it to just sort of blend it out a little bit, like wild violet or, other things, maybe even, well, you can do stinging nettle also this time of year if you were going to make a pesto this time of year. The thing about garlic mustard is it's these plants, it's a 2-year plant. So the first year it's the, more of the roots and the leaves. The second year it's the leaves and the seeds, because the root at that point gets woody. Now, a lot of people don't realize the root is a horseradish substitute. It's delicious. So a lot of people add that tender root to their pestos. Again, that would be first year. Again, it also dries easily. You can find it throughout the winter time. And let me see. Yep, that's about it. You can, it's just really easy to grow, and it likes a lot of shade. So that's another thing you'll find about it, is it likes the shade. Danny, why don't you take it away?
Okay. So let's see. Garlic mustard. Okay. Garlic mustard is, the properties are analgesic, so it's great for pain relief, antiseptic, astringent, decongestant, and diaphoretic, which means it induces sweating to lower your body temperature. For garlic mustard, roots, leaves, and flowers are used. It's a great decongestant. In fact, it really does help with coughs, colds, flus. Originally, it was used as an anti-scorbutic for people that had scurvy because of its high vitamin C content. But it's also, even though it's great to use, what a lot of people don't realize is that it is so invasive. It's been banned in a number of states. But if they actually appreciated the benefits that it has medicinally, they would just eat it and stop complaining about how it's spreading. It helps lower the cholesterol. It will thin your blood, so you do have to be careful about that. But like Lynn said, if you were having plantain, say, as a faux mushroom risotto, then you could have this to balance it out, because things that are high in vitamin C tend to thin the blood a bit. This can also help boost your immune system, and it can also aid digestion. It's an antiseptic and an astringent. So if you chew it, it will help to tighten your gums. And if you have any like oral issues, like cold sores or things, the one thing that I would say about it though, is even though it may be helpful for tightening your gums and for throat pain, I don't know that you necessarily want to go around with big garlic breath, which is another point, that if you start handling it, it is so strong, it gets absorbed through your skin, and you can end up with garlic breath simply by handling this. The other thing is Brother Aloysius, he's just an amazing guy as far as I'm concerned. He actually used to do a poultice of this for not only leg ulcers, but for gangrenous sores. And I mean, hey, I understand the antiseptic properties and the pain relieving properties, but I don't know which is going to smell worse, like the big garlic smell or the rotting flesh smell. The other thing that you do have to worry about is, for some people, there will be dermal sensitivity. So even though he found great success using this on, gangrenous tissue, or even for eczema, you might have to worry about if it causes any kind of topical dermatitis or redness of the skin if you're a sensitive person. That's it. Hello, anyone out there? Hello.
Sorry, I muted myself.
I didn't know if it, like, just the same way that it extended it, maybe it just cut off on me and I didn't know. So
I know I muted myself, but this is something that we I try to mention it on every tour, is this issue with a lot of the wild edibles have a high vitamin C content, and that does seem to be a blood thinner. So and many of the things we're talking about have a big vitamin C content, which is a blood thinner. The blood coagulant is the plantain. That's so you can always combine it with that. But there's foods you eat every day that are blood thinners, like wild blueberries, or lots of blueberries, almonds, and other things can thin your blood. So if you start getting nosebleeds, that sort of thing, you can add some plantain to that, and or back off on the blueberries. I have a granddaughter who seems to, she liked a lot of blueberries, but then she started getting these nosebleeds. So it's just something to keep in mind. Everything in kind of in moderation, but that's the trick of eating, is to keep things in balance. Okay, so we're gonna just keep plowing ahead as long as they're letting us. I'm gonna go to the cresses. So I'm gonna do the screen share, and oh no, Crest. By the way, I just want to go back to that for 1 minute, just to show you that all these cresses, there's always a cress around, or a mustard. But the next thing we're going to talk about is the penny cress and the bitter cress. So if you look at that list under mustards and cresses, you can see, are you seeing this? Everyone seeing this?
Yep.
Okay. You can see the bitter cress and the penny cress. So we're going to click on to the penny cress, which is my favorite. And it's up on Lemon Hill, just across from Boathouse Row, is at that corner where you see that staircase going up. If you go up, and you can see the mansion, Lemon Hill Mansion, and it just look to the hillside along that crest. This penny cress is there. And penny cress is not like other cresses. Most cresses have a very undulated, if you think of watercress, that sort of thing, that it looks like separate leaves coming off that, off the stem, or off the leaf stem. But this is more a whole leaf. And then the penny is the part, that's the blossom and the seed pod. Looks like a little penny, I guess they think. And so that comes on later. But this plant I love, because it's not only got the, mustard taste to it, but there's a sweetness to it as well. At least that's what I'm tasting, is a sweetness. And also, just in researching it recently, doing additional research, It's huge. It's becoming huge in the biofuel industry now. They are genetically engineering it somewhat, which is, I don't support that. But it is this plant that they are working on, and they're using it as ground cover because it's great for bringing nutrients back into the soil, and as for a cover crop. So pennycress is, the thing. It's called field cress or field pennycress. I don't know. Just call it pennycress because there's no other pennycresses. Well, within the pennycress family, there are lots of apparently different varieties. So, okay, take it away, Danny.
Okay, on the cresses. Oop. So there's hairy bittercress and penny field cress. The hairy bittercress, actually, you'll probably see a lot. It actually pops up in my window pots. I actually brought in a plant that I had out all summer, and it had landed in, and that's great for salads. It's got great magnesium, beta carotene, calcium, full of antioxidants, so it's useful. However, for any kind of medicinal value, it's the penny field cress, and these are the blossoms that Lynn was talking about. Because it's antibacterial, it's got broad spectrum effectiveness against staph and strep infections. It's anti-inflammatory, diaphoretic, again, so it will help you sweat to break a fever, and expectorant. The seeds are actually what's used the most. They're infused and then drunk, and it helps to rid the body mostly of respiratory gunk in your lungs. So if you have congested lungs, if you suffer from bronchitis, it helps to remove mucus. A lot of books will say it helps to remove pus from your lungs. I think if you're getting pus in your lungs, and there's a lot more going on than just, a normal bronchitis, but it's also been used for other bodily secretions that are infections. So whether that's vaginal secretions or seminal secretions, it's been shown to work on that. Like Lynn said, with the biofuel issue, it is being studied, and the biggest reason why anybody's interested in it is because they found out they could actually spend less in both water and chemicals to produce it, as well as any kind of energy consumption, and they're going to get twice as much oil out of this than they do per acre as opposed to soybean. So it is something that they're looking at seriously. The one thing that I think is great about it is it's incredibly anti-inflammatory. The entire plant is anti-inflammatory. So if you suffer from joint pains, or a lot of pain is just simply caused by inflammation. So if you can get that down by consuming this as a tea or eating it as a plant, that's a great thing. The only thing that you need to be worried about is that by having too much, and with wild foods, just like anything else, you should not overdo it. But large doses can affect your white blood cell count. It can lower that, as well as cause nausea and dizziness. So if you're on other medications that may already give you issues with that, or if you're particularly fighting an infection, maybe you don't want to do too much of this when you're dealing with other drugs, because you don't want to lower your white blood cell count. You just really want everything to get out of your body and feel better. So that's it for penny field cress. Wow.
I didn't know about that. That's important to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to the, any questions on the cresses? Any comments, questions? Anybody use it? Okay. Yeah, so it does come up everywhere. It's in our local garden. It's the bittercress, and the bittercress and the pennycress are the first things that come out in the winter. Actually, the pennycress, I almost don't, that might die out at the late fall, but it's the really one of the first things out in the winter is the penny cress. So, and then the bittercress is everywhere. So those are great to have, but again, caution, it's an herb. It's not a salad. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do this screen share again to our next, which is the white pine. So let's do that. Do the screen share. Click onto the white. Okay, go back and back to the white pine, and I have that under conifers, under the trees. So if you go under trees and go to conifers, I've got them listed there. And here's white pine. And so the white pine, that's what it looks like. And most foragers focus on the white pine because it can't be confused with the yew bush, which is a smaller spruce type needle, which is very toxic. So the white pine is the sort of the go-to conifer. But so we've talked about a lot of things are sources of vitamin C, and white pine is one of them. And I find it a very refreshing drink. I just put the needles in the I cut them up a little bit, put them in a blender, and then sieve them through either a very fine sieve or sometimes just through a cotton handkerchief to make sure I don't get any of the needles. And then I just drink that fresh. I just like it that way. But it also has other uses. I mean, other than the needles, there's a pollen that it has some sort of, I don't know if it has testosterone in it or aphrodisiac. I'll have Danny address that. But there is a pollen that is very nutritious. And then the inner cambium, the inner bark, can also be used. So sometimes people, if you have a kind of an ice cream that has other ingredients in it and it says cellulose, they're basically talking about tree bark. And that's why some ice creams, it just gives me a bad upset stomach because of that. It's not, it can be used as a food, I suppose, but it's more of what do you call it, a survival famine food kind of thing. Or if you make it correctly, maybe it would be fine. I don't have really any experience with that. The sap or that, it does have the, wait a second, there is a gum from the amber, that sap that comes off the tree that you can chew a bit, but it's also an herbicide. So what does that tell you? So you got to be a little careful with this. It's got pitch. Also, if you look down on other uses, pitch, waterproofing, and wood. So there's, but it is a great source of vitamin C during the winter time. Danny, why don't you take it away?
Okay. All righty, white pine. White pine is naturally antiseptic, anti-inflammatory, mild analgesic for pain relief, expectorant, and it's great for drawing. Actually, when you're talking about the cambium and eating it, there is a long history of eating the inner bark. The Mohawk actually used to call the Algonquin Adirondack, which means bark eater. I know of stories from my uncle that they used to take the kind of soft rotted wood and use that as a version of kind of powder for chafing. So that's one use of it. Both Algonquin as well as the Merrimack, as well as who else is in that area? Another Indian tribe that went right out of my head, but they've all used it for coughs, colds, congestion, tuberculosis at one point. The Algonquin were really big on using it as a cold infusion, while other people would use it as a warm infusion. The sap or the pitch is also used as a wound treatment, not only as kind of a natural Band-Aid for because of its stickiness, but it also helps seal the wound and work as an antiseptic. And if you have something in a wound and you put the sap on it, it will help draw it out. If you're old enough to remember black salve for drawing, pine pitch is one of the things that's actually in there to pull it up. So if you have issues with a boil you're trying to pop or just get a splinter out of your finger, it's helpful for that. As far as the needles go, you don't need to do much to make a great tea with it. And the tea's got like 5 times more vitamin C concentration than oranges. It's also high in vitamin A. So that helps with, you know, your antioxidants, your anti-aging, your hair, skin, nails. It's also good for sore throat. It has abilities to help people that suffer from allergies. And it's also been used for mental clarity and for depression, well, antidepressive. In fact, even if you talk about people that deal with aromatherapy and oils, pine is one of those grounding oils that helps you feel in a better mood and just lift your mood overall. Done.
Wow, that's great. I didn't know about the depression thing. That's great, because now you can steep it like a hot tea if you want to.
Yes.
But I enjoy it fresh. And it's interesting because some foods are better fresh and some are better, and more nutrients are released when it's steeped or cooked and things like that. But I personally prefer it fresh. Any questions? Has anybody tried any pine water or pine tea? So that's your homework today. Go out and find some pine bark and just do it. Alex, you've done it? You're gonna have to unmute yourself. Yeah. I can't hear you. Can't hear you. Okay. Still can't hear you. Okay, all right. We do, okay, let's move on because we're still, okay, so we've done the white pine and now we have the dock, which is one of my favorites. I'm gonna do the screen share, go on to the dock. All right, so here it is, you go down, it's on the first column. Just a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, stop share. Okay, I just want to make sure everyone could still hear me. Danny? Yeah, okay, all right, so I'm gonna go back to screen share. I got this feeling that okay. So you go down to the docks. Patient stock is what I see mostly along Kelly Drive and in that area. Let me just show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like coming out of the ground. It is also, I think it's a 2-year plant. Yes, I think. Oh, shoot, how did that happen? Well, oh, that's something else. I don't know. Okay, it will send up, and that's doing that too. So forget that. At any rate, the dock has some oxalic acid in it, so it has patient stock. It has a lemony flavor to it. There are several different kinds of dock, but this is the one that you can eat raw. Although if you don't want the oxalic acid, then you cook it, and then you get the okra mucilaginous slimy consistency again. But you can use that to thicken things up. So, taste wise, I love it. I love it. You can just grab one of those leaves. It's really pretty. They're pretty long, and just eat it fresh. All the other docks, so going back to the other docks, I would, let's see, again, first thing, like the bitter dock and the curly dock there. So I would, if they have a little red in them, they can be round leaf. This is a bitter round leaf dock. The curly dock is the yellow dock. They should be cooked, I think. They're better cooked. If you try to eat these raw, it's very bitter and they're very rough tasting. It's a rough taste to it. So, but if you cook it, then it's delicious because it gives you resistance as compared to the patient stock, which is the okra mucilaginous quality to it. This, the texture is better for a cooked vegetable, I think. So they both can be used to wrap something like a grape leaf, and you can use it in that context. Danny, why don't you take it away and I'll.
Okay. So, as Lynn was saying, there's patient stock and curly dock. Patient stock is probably the preferred one for eating, but when it comes for medicinal benefits, then it's the curly or yellow dock Rumex crispus that is used. It's a natural antibacterial, antifungal, diuretic, hepatic, laxative, and a tonic cleanser. It's what they call a lepathum, which comes from the Greek word to cleanse. And it's actually one of those kinds of blood purifying roots, much like burdock, or if you think of like dandelion or even chicory. The taproot is really strong, and when it's mixed with something like dandelion. It's a great way to just purify the body. Curly dock by itself is kind of a balanced purgative because it's got anthraquinones, which work as a natural laxative, but it also has tannins, which keep it from being overly laxative. So it kind of like keeps you from getting diarrhea, although it is helping get everything out of your body. The amazing thing about this plant is if you break it off at the taproot, if you don't get the entire thing out, it will return. And one plant can have as many as 30,000 seeds. The other amazing thing is that the seeds can lay dormant for up to 50 years and still grow. So if you love it, you're in like Flynn, you got it forever. If you don't like it so much, you're in trouble. Other thing is I have been experimenting with the seeds because I found an old recipe about soaking the seeds when they come in the fall in rum and then using that for coughs and colds and pleurisy and people who have issues with fluid in their lungs. And it has worked actually pretty well because this is probably the year number 2 that I haven't really had any cold flu. And I used to be one of those people that got kind of chesty strep throat kind of issues most of my life. So it does work. If you want to take empirical evidence and my own personal experience, then I will say it worked.
Cool. And you can find these plants anywhere. You know, it is interesting that you should talk about the whole issue of you know, spreading, because almost all the wild plants we talk about do spread, and that's what you want a plant to do. So it's you know, it's sort of interesting because people who are into the cultivars, like they want everything, they're sort of organize their yard like they organize their front room, you know, and that's not really what you want of wild plants. You want them to grow and to spread because you need a lot, you know, if you're going to be feeding yourself and others, you really want that. But it's interesting because people say, oh, I don't want goutweed that spreads. I'm like, well, you kind of need it to spread if you want to have a lot to eat and to take advantage of. Okay, so, and the next one and is the onion grass. So let's let me do the screen share.
I have a quick question.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't ask questions. Sorry. Go ahead.
So with the curly dock, what is the best way with the dandelion if I wanted it for a blood purifier? Is it the root, and how would I?
The purification parts of it come from the root, unfortunately. The seeds really are just for kind of respiratory issues. So you would have to get the root, and that is going to involve, because like I said, it goes down pretty far. You're probably going to need one of those like burdock root shovels that are like, they're kind of a half, what do you call that, Lynn? Because you got
it's a drain spade.
Drain spade, that's
and
it.
it's on our website. So I'll show you, you know, I don't know if I've linked it to something, but it's basically a drain spade, and the shaft is a foot and a half, 2 feet, you know, so, and it's this wide and it's curved. And that you use something like that, or I'm sure there are other good shovels too, but you need a special shovel to get some of these roots. I have a drain spade because of trying to dig out, you know, or digging out burdock root, which is really one of the longest, hardest ones to dig out. Yeah.
So once you get the root, do you boil it or you dry it and powder it, or what's the best way?
You can do all the above. I basically have cut it when it's fresh and then dried it. I know Lynn does like a lot of natural drying. I have no problem using a dehydrator because I want to be able to keep it, and I want to make sure there's no moisture so I don't have any issues with it getting moldy or anything. But you can either chop it fresh and use it. You're going to have to do a decoction. You're going to have to, like, you know, boil it for like 20 minutes or so in order to get everything out, versus like other leafier things that you can just leave for like, you know, 7 to 10 minutes. So you will have to do that, but I've done it with burdock. And then if you do it really strong, then you can either make it into a syrup, so it keeps like a shelf-stable syrup. If you're doing it, you take your extraction and you do it in a 1-to-1 sugar to fluid thing, then you're good for shelf stability. Or you could do it as long as you keep, if you need to put alcohol in it, 20% is your magic number to make sure that it stays shelf stable. And then you can just have it and take it as you need it. Or you can just, like I said, when it's fresh, if you want to put it into slices, dry it, and then make a decoction whenever you need it, you can do that too. You can dry it and then pulverize it so you have it. But I actually like to work with whole roots or slices of roots versus powdering them. I really only powder stuff if I absolutely have to.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. All right, excellent. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the where are we? Onion grass. Onion grass is great. We go down the third column down towards the bottom, onion and garlic grass. This is kind of the family. There's ramps in there too, but we're going to click on to the onion grass. There is a way to figure out the difference between onion and garlic. I learn it and then I forget it. But basically, it's great. Onion grass is something that you can see. It really pops up in the winter time. This is a better, nope, there we go again. Some of these pictures, I guess, are linked in. But if you dig it out, that's pretty much what it looks like. So onion grass are onions. It's not like a pretend onion or something. This is the real onion. And, you can think of them as chives. And so, and with onion grass, it's got all kinds of medicinal qualities that Danny will get into. But this is the time of year to find it because everything else is sort of died back or, low growing. But onion grass is sticking right up there, just waiting to be cut back. And it's probably one of the easiest wild edibles to recognize. Danny, why don't you take it away?
Okay. This is one of the ones that I have an issue with only because I know not everybody wants to get into the whole Latin thing with taxonomy, but I think sometimes because some things are called so many names and common names, it makes it really difficult to understand which is which. So what Lynn was just showing was Allium Canadense. In the same family is Allium venale, which is what this is. But the problem is so many of them are called the same things or similar things because onion grass can also be called wild garlic. It can also be called crow garlic. So it's kind of hard to narrow down which you want unless you're talking the Latin name. However, that being said, most of these guys have some of the same familial traits. So onion grass is good as lowering your cholesterol. It's good for your circulation, both your respiratory circulation as well as just your overall circulation. It's great as a decongestant because it has a little bit of that bitter sulfury compound. That makes it great for lowering blood pressure, lowering your cholesterol, as a tonic for overall gastric health. And it can loosen congestion if you want to drink it as a tea. If you like a savory kind of drink, then I guess you could have a hot onion tea. But I would think that eating it would be more beneficial, something like that. If you want to use it topically for what it does for loosening congestion, you can try doing a poultice with it. But it's one of those things that because it tends to be a little bit stringy, chopped up in a dish is probably the best way to consume this. But if all else fails, you can do a tea with the tops, or you can try and, mash the bottoms and make kind of a honey garlic syrup in the way that people have done with garlic and onions and honey for years, just to take on a daily basis. So you can just, chop up the bottom bulby onion bits and put in honey, and then just take a tablespoon of that, every day or so, just to keep cold and lurgy at bay.
One thing I wanted to add is that, you can recognize or identify onion grass because if you cut it, it smells like onion. So in the spring, there are other Star of Bethlehem, other things come up that don't smell like onion. And so that's one of the ways you can differentiate it from other things. So you're going for the onion smell. Any questions? Anybody ever do this? Do you have it in your yard? Yes, Jason. Okay, so your homework, cut it, wash it, rinse it, and eat it and try it because it's just like onions. There's no reason you can't use it just like an onion.
So
it's
I'll
great.
stop digging it up and throwing it away, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, no reason to at all. And I love the little bulbs. I mean, that you can just throw right into a salad. One thing I didn't also say is because is that not only are the bulbs good to eat and the greens, but when it flowers, those flowers are edible. The bulbs before it flowers are edible. The seeds are edible. You know, so you can harvest it at all kinds of different times. And those seeds or the bulbs, the little bulblets, the flower bulblets are really nice and crunchy. They're really small and crunchy. So it's great to sprinkle on a salad, you know, so you don't have to cut up, you know, an onion. So yeah, it's great all the way around. All parts of that plant are edible.
And just one last thing to echo what Lynn was saying, definitely the smell is what you're going for. There is another plant called death camas that sort of looks like it. When you pull out, does have a little onion shape on the bottom, but they do not smell like onions. And the way that their leaves and fronds come up is different because with most of the onions and garlic that we're talking about, they'll come up as individuals. When you see death camas, it kind of sprouts off at the side and has a funky like growth shoot that happens outside of the bulb. So just be aware, not
Yeah.
to scare you, but just be aware.
Right. We haven't lost anyone so far from the club that I'm aware of. Although it's interesting because somebody did say to me the other day that they went and foraged around. She did say it was near a railroad tracks, and she foraged a bunch of dandelions and got really sick. And I'm like, well, that's because maybe you ate too many dandelions. Maybe you're not used to it. But also they do spray along train tracks. So you don't want to be harvesting your food around train tracks or next to roads and that sort of thing. And sometimes it might taste really sweet, but that's because of the lead. So lead, you know, the reason kids eat lead paint is because it has a sweet taste, I'm told. I've never actually eaten it, but that's what they say. So, you know, sweetness doesn't generally, you know, doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you. It could mean that it's got lead in it. So, okay, so now we're going to go on to our next plant, and that is, sorry, back to the plant profile, and that's a stinging nettle is our last one. So here we go, the nettles, middle row, middle column. Now the nettles, there are actually 4 different kinds of nettles. There's clearweed and stinging. Those are both stinging nettles. There's wood nettle, which is, okay, all right. No, I'm sorry. Well, there might be, I think there's also a false nettle. Yeah, there's wood, stinging, and clearweed. Yeah, okay. So clearweed's a strange looking thing. The 2 stingers are the stinging nettle and the wood nettle. So I'm gonna click on to the stinging nettle. There you go. That's generally what it looks like. Depending on, and those are the stingers, and they can really hurt. And this is what it would look like this time of year, just coming out of the ground. But don't let that fool you. Even little baby stinging nettles can sting. So you want to be really careful with it. Generally, the antidote for that is jewelweed, but jewelweed I don't think is up. Jewelweed doesn't come up until it's a lot warmer.
Dock leaf.
Pardon me?
Dock leaf.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'll let you talk about that. And just to say that this is a delicious plant, and easy to cook. You know, chop it up, cook it down, dry it. But it has other uses. So a lot of people don't realize that stinging nettle it can also be used for fiber that's in this thing. And as fodder, it was used to make tea, beer, and plant dye. So I did want to go back to the dock for a second, where I was doing some refreshing today and noticed that they said dock makes a good plant dye that doesn't need a mordant. Now, I'm not sure if they were, I think they're talking about the root, but that's always interesting because I'm into fibers, and most plant dyes need a mordant to make them fix. And most of the mordants are very toxic, like aluminum and that sort of thing. So it seems like you can get like a toxic, dyeing can be a toxic thing. And the idea is to get a non-toxic dye and a non-toxic mordant. So any plants we find in roots that can dye fabric yet not need a mordant are always very useful to know about. So getting back to this one can also be used as a plant dye, but it looks like it might need a mordant. But it's used as fodder for livestock and to make, as I said, tea and beer and rennet. That's something that, something about milk curdling, I think, and maybe cheese making. Okay, so, and then there's a false nettle, but I think that's also a nettle. So, but that doesn't have any stingers on it. And I can't ever find anything for the false nettle in terms of its edibility, but it looks like it's edible, but I haven't ever really gone that far as to, frankly, just try it and see, because there's so little knowledge of the false nettle. So there would be the clearweed, the stinging nettle, the wood nettle. I'll just show you that right now, because that's interesting in that stings like heck also. And where did they go? But it has a fatter leaf. You see it, and it lays more like a horizontally. So it's a fat, more horizontal leaf. So you also have to watch out for that. But it's not as common. See, there it is, and it's common in those woods, but it's not generally as common as stinging nettle is. But that's what it looks like. It's a fatter, rounder leaf. Okay, take it away, Danny.
Okay, stinging nettle, if you could have a plant that was like your spirit plant, that would be mine, stinging nettle. I love it. It's an analgesic, anti-inflammatory, antiseptic, astringent, and a diuretic. The easiest way to deal with this is as a tea. I get it and dry it and use it, but it's also incredibly, a lot of chefs now that are trying to get more in that like farm to table movement are doing it as like, you know, in soup or creamed stinging nettle. It's fantastic as a blood builder because it has an awful lot of iron. It can be used as a diuretic or an astringent. For people that have anemia, it's great because it helps to remove uric acid from your body. It's great for people that have issues with rheumatism or with gout. If you're having glandular issues, it's also really high in vitamin C. And let's see what else. When it was originally brought to Europe, it was brought by the Romans because they really could not deal with the fact that England was so bloody cold. So they would beat themselves with this, and it was called urtication, where they would actually take the branches of stinging nettles and beat themselves with it because that would help to boost the circulation and make them feel a bit warmer. I've also used the seeds from stinging nettle because if you mix them with rosemary and you put them in an oil base, it can be helpful for arthritis and rheumatism, especially in the small bones of your hand. The only time that you cannot eat stinging nettle is when it is in flower. When it's in flower, it produces these calcium carbonate rods that can damage your kidneys. But if you find stinging nettle in the wild, it usually does like 2 spurts. You'll get like a whole big growth thing in the spring, and then it'll kind of go into flower. And then when it gets out of flower and starts growing again, then you can do a fall batch. When it is in flower, just because you can't eat it doesn't mean you can't use it in other ways. If you want to use it for things like hair loss or for thickening your hair or to restore your hair color, although people swear by that all the time, but I've never seen it happen, then you can use nettle at that time. And usually at that time you're using for hair issues, it's the root of the stinging nettle, not the leaves. It's also said to eliminate dandruff. So you may actually see nettle root in some of your, I remember the shampoo Chlorane used to use that quite a bit, especially for brunettes that were turning a bit gray. So maybe there is something to the hair color restoration. But overall, nettle is just great. And especially if you have allergies in the spring, it is my go-to for that. And especially if you have issues with watery eyes and that kind of like painful sinus issues, if you do nettle and peppermint, between peppermint helping with the analgesic properties and the nettle just helping to like work as an astringent and rid your body of so much stuff. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Better than Claritin.
Yeah. Any questions? Any comments?
Oh, yes. I was actually wondering if it could be used because Danny had been mentioning it as being used as a dried tea, like drying it out and then using it for tea. I was wondering if it could be used fresh to make a tea with.
Yeah, you can, once the hot water hits it, it takes, kind of kills the formic acid, which is what's the stinging ingredient when you get stung by it. So you can do it that way. I think it's nicer and milder if you do it fresh. It's just, usually when I see it, it's usually at a period where it's either fresh and I'm gathering it and gonna use that for dinner, or it's in the season where it's going to seed. I'm worried about capturing the seed so I can use it in balms and things for fingers and stuff later. But yeah, fresh it's delightful. A little bit of lemon, a little honey, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Question.
Another question.
Anybody have experience with a stinging nettle that has purple overtones to it? There's this one batch that I usually go to get, and I'm sure it's stinging nettle. I mean, I wear gloves when I harvest it, but it also always seems to have some purple overtones to the leaves.
Well, I'm not thinking that that's that unusual. I think I've seen that myself.
I
Not
think
positive.
it's where it's growing, because I've seen it that's growing in more sunlight that seems to be greener, but when I've seen it kind of a little bit shaded area, it does have kind of, now that you mention it, like a mauvey kind of tone. You're talking
Okay, and
about,
that's usually where this patch is. It's in a more shaded area than out in broad daylight.
I think that might be what does it, because I know with certain plants, depending on how much water and how much light they get, they can look a little different and not quite as bright.
Gotcha. Okay, good.
Again, it helps to have the app to take a picture of it just to double check. But also, you know, if you see, it depends on the plant, but if you see mauvey and the general state of the plant is green, I would go for the green rather than it turning mauvey, you know, because that, in some cases you could have some sort of fungus or something growing on it. So I'd rather go with the green than the mauve, if that's the case. I transplanted some stinging nettle and put it in one of my pots, and it really transplants well and doesn't want to leave. So if you, you know, if you want any stinging nettle in your yard or anything like that, you know, just it's easy to transplant. You might want to put it in a container so it doesn't go anyplace else. Of course, the seeds might blow. I'm not sure about that, but I had to dig it out. But it is an easy to transplant plant. Let's see.
Can you use the leaf for hair growth?
Most of the information I've ever found on hair issues have been for the root.
Okay.
I'm not saying that you can't use the leaf. It's just usually when they start breaking down like specific areas, it's because one part is better for that. So usually when they're recommending the root, it's just because it's stronger. That's not to say that you can't like give it a shot. Let us know. I'd love to.
Yeah, I've actually tinctured it. Like I've tried tincturing a lot of different things. I've actually tinctured it, and I have a couple people who have used it and are swearing by it. And I just find it interesting. I don't know if it's like a mental, you know, that whole effect where it's like, oh, I want it to work, so it's working. But some people have, so I've been trying to make an oil out of it just to kind of see what it does.
You mean for hair?
For hair, yeah.
Wow.
Just out of curiosity.
Hey, I'm a big one on trying whatever to see how it works, because I was not a big one to really think that the seed was going to be so much different as far as, you know, pain for arthritic hands. But once I started using it and I tried it with several people, and they found a major difference. And if you're, you know, still typing or doing things with your hands, knitting, and you have issues with, you know, osteoarthritis, it can be a big help. So
aren't the seeds good for prostate health too? I heard
that is another one I didn't mention. There's just always so much stuff that I always think like, God, I should have said, yeah.
I do want to mention that Danny's background is with the pharmaceutical industry, so she's very oriented towards detail, which is great because that's not my forte. And I really appreciate it. So she's got a lot of detail, but these plants have, like Danny said, have so many attributes. You can't really name them all. So we're kind of focused on, the ones that are the most, available. Any other questions, guys? Yes, Melissa.
That was very interesting what you just said about Danny and her background. So Danny, how did you, segue from the pharmaceutical to the herbal and natural?
Penance. No, really, I got to the point where after like 20 years in, I left a company, and when I did that, I started making soap, and then everybody at that point, it wasn't everybody and their sister making soap like it is now. So I was one of the first people that started doing it with essential oils, and then I really wasn't happy with the way that with essential oils, I'm still relying on somebody else to do it. So I started experimenting with herbalism and did some classes, did some training. And then I just realized that I wanted to be able to have control over all the bits and pieces. And the only way that you can get that is if you can forage for the herb or grow the herb or use the herb to make tinctures and salves and potions and things, and really get to know it on a one-to-one basis. So, and it's a rabbit hole. You start in one end, and the next thing you know, you just get into crazier, deeper. There you go.
Right.
Were you awed over how the foraging and finding the plants, how superior it was to like the synthetics and so forth?
Well, first let me just say my background was in the medical and pharmaceutical sales and marketing, not like making of. So I will say that. But what I will say, the biggest thing to me is I think all of us became so disconnected at a certain point from nature, whether it's because we lived in a city or because, if your grandmother did it, then you grow up and you get money and thinking like, well, I'm not doing what she did. So you get away from it. But the more that you experiment with natural stuff and the more that you try and get away from like the commercially pushed stuff, the more that you find like things do work better. I mean, I used to be the girl that was on like serious allergy pills from the minute anything started to bloom, like even had a whisper of blooming in February all year round. But now, because of what I drink with nettle tea and things that I do, I don't have those issues anymore. I'm 57. I'm not on any drugs. And my doctor is still stunned. Like, I can't believe you're not on statins or something. And it's because mostly I try and eat natural. I try and, do the herbs that I think will help and benefit. And that's not saying that I don't think you should go to the doctor, because if you need to, you definitely should. And there's some things if you're bleeding to death, don't patch some Plantain on it and think no, I don't have to go to the hospital. That's not going to help. But you do find that things will work really well and help to ameliorate symptoms. And it's a constant learning situation. It's a constant testing. It's a constant, just seeing how it works on me and the people around me, and then just going forward with that information.
I think a lot of us came to this, through experience. I would like to say that I had any kind of training. I was not a Girl Scout or Brownie or anything. And I just came to it out of interest and frustration with the medical community. And also I was naturally allergic to penicillin. And now I'm allergic to almost all antibiotics, which I guess is a good thing. And so, I get terrible reactions. So I use Plantain. I use Plantain for almost everything in terms of that kind of needing an antibiotic for something. And so it's just all these, when they have those little inserts to the drugs, take those inserts seriously. When you look at those side effects, take those seriously. That isn't just for the attorneys. Those are serious side effects that you should read and understand. And at least, to me, I don't take candy from a stranger. And a lot of the, just even the supplements and the medicines, I'm on no medication. I haven't been on medication. I'm 68 ever. I mean, really, and no long-term stuff, because I just find food and herbs are my medicine. And if you keep yourself, healthy that way, hopefully you won't, like Danny said, if you're in an emergency situation, you may want to go to the doctor. but you know, otherwise it's best to know how to take care of yourself through your diet. And by the way, speaking of stinging nettle, you can buy nettle tea. And yeah, I go to Organic Moms at 11th and Market, and it's near Market on 11th Street. And they sell nettle tea. It's from stinging nettle. It's, you know, so you can, you know, you don't have to forage for everything. If you can buy it at the supermarket, that's the second best thing to do. And so I get black walnuts at the supermarket. I get burdock. They carry burdock root, which I love. Burdock root tastes like, it's a thistle, and which is also artichokes are thistles, so it tastes like artichoke. I love that stuff. So more and more stores are offering some of these heretofore, you know, wild edibles. So, you know, so now I want to just get you guys feeling, how would you like it if maybe we did this on a monthly basis and covered, you know, so the idea would be to cover the plants that are kind of available. So we break up the year. And how would you like to do this kind of on a monthly basis?
Yes.
Okay. Danny, how would you like to do this on a monthly basis?
I'm good with whatever the I just wanted to throw one thing in there when what you were saying about like herbs and everything. Yeah, you're right. You don't have to forage for everything, but do me a favor and do the planet a favor. If you were going to drink an herbal tea, drink the herbs. Get a tea strainer and to go for loose herbs. Don't support like more of these little plastic or linen or whatever tea bags going into landfills. Please just get yourself a tea strainer. You can buy the herbs. I've even seen chickweed available in 1 pound bags. Get it dried and use it that way.
Actually, when I go to a cafe, I bring my own little sieve. What you can do is you can just take a cotton handkerchief, or you can buy organic cotton if you want to, sew a little satchel. And then you go to the cafe, and I have little safety scissors, like, you know, what the kids use. And I just cut it open and I pour it in and dunk it in my water, because a lot of those satchels now are they're a synthetic fabric, or there's something else, and it's disgusting. So I mean, I like to support our local cafes, but sometimes the way they make their stuff is kind of concerning. So yeah, you know, bring your own satchel, your own sieve or whatever. And, you know,
I'm not going to go that far, I'll be honest, but I'm just saying, like, for home use, we have like tea strainers all over, and there's just, I think it's much more cost effective and much more eco and green if you just buy a big thing. And if you have either a Tupperware container, or I have big glass jars that I dump everything in, just seal in. And when I need a cup of tea, I just scoop it out that way, because
glass is always better. Yeah, go glass. But also, you know, the plant profile chart that I kept referring back to, print that out and start circling all the plants that you can identify. You print a couple things out, one for circling all the plants you can identify, and then circle all the plants you've actually tried. And that'll build your confidence. And all of a sudden you'll realize that you're learning more and more plants. Because when I started this group 11 years ago, I knew maybe, you know, 20 plants, and now, you know, I know 230. But it, you know, it's a building process, and you need to, you know, you need to also build your own confidence. So also, please get an app. Picture This is the one I recommend, but get an app to assist you if you don't have anyone else near you who can help you out. That's a nice daily thing. And my granddaughters like to use it just to identify any kind of plant. Okay, so anybody else, any comments, questions? Okay, I'll be hosting the next one, because I did upgrade my Zoom plan to you know, last as long as I want it to last, I guess. And so we'll be doing this. And now we did record this one, right, Danny? Yeah, so we're gonna post this on the website and on the meetup, so that you guys can access this. And because Danny said a lot of things, and I'm trying to take them down because it's not all on the website. So I'd like to include it on our website and keep those plant profiles up to date. But Danny's always full of great information and anecdotes and things like that we really, really appreciate. And I feel so lucky to have her. I also want to, I do want to say Louise Francis, who also did a lot of our tours, has moved south down into the Richmond area. So I'm not sure if that's a permanent move or a temporary move, but you know, we just so appreciated her participation as well. And the way Wild Foods is set up is you can post your own meetup if you want to, and just people from your area, like Jim up in Bucks County, if you want to post a meetup, please do so, because there are members, you know, we have over 5,200 members now, and they're not all living in Philadelphia. So, you know, just don't hesitate to post your own meetups and, you know, do a little walking tour. You don't have to know everything. Just don't claim you know anything. That keeps the liability down. Don't charge anything either. Anyway, any other questions or comments? I want to thank Melissa also for being so helpful, and your comments as well. So thank you all for coming, and thank you, Danny, for hosting this. And hopefully we'll see you next month. And Danny and I will talk about a date and do this again. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
You're very
everybody, for
welcome.
coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you much.
Thank you
so much.
Okay. So yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.